của nước này. Abaddon là của nước. Abaddon là của nước.
No one orders me around.
Welcome to our village.
What is it? Speak, fool.
Abaddon.
Tread lightly. At last, Frostborn hungers.
Này. Leader.
This is Frostborn hungers.
Mít này gặp Thra.
Finally.
Thra.
Speak. Tread lightly. At last, I'll make sure you glory to the first blood. Your pain shall be great. I'll make sure you suffer. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. At last. Finally. What is it now? At last. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Finally. Frostborn hungers. Now at last.
Our allies' town
This
needs
is
help.
Where shall my blood be spilled? Tread lightly. Frostborn hungers.
Giết nó gần cạn máu.
This is more like it. Frostborn hungers.
Our allies' town needs help.
Speak, fool. At last.
Tiếng nữa.
Finally. Your pain shall be heavy. This is Frostborn hungers. At last. Frostborn hungers. Finally. Frostborn hungers. Now Frostborn. At last.
Our allies'
This is
town
more
needs help.
At last. Frostborn. No one orders me around. At last. Frostborn hungers. At last. Frostborn hungers. At last. Finally.
Our
At
allies'
last.
town needs help.
Frostborn hungers. Finally. At last. Frostborn hungers. This is what Frostborn hungers. Finally. Frostborn hungers. Finally. At Speak, fool. Frostborn hungers. Oh, it's you, son of This is what at last, Frostborn hungers. Finally, this is what Frostborn hungers. Finally, faithless coward. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. At last. For the Lich King. Finally. At last. Frostborn hungers. At last. This is more like it. At last.
Our allies' town
This
needs
is
help.
At last.
Unstoppable.
Our allies' town
Lich
needs help.
Glory to the Scourge.
เราจะต้องแข็ง
For the Lich King.
Wicked Savior.
No one was now Frost. For the Lich King. Oh, son. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Finally. At last. Finally. At last. This is more like it. For the Lich King. Tread like
Our allies' town
Frostborn
needs help.
hungers.
Monster kill.
At last.
Our allies' town needs help.
Frostborn hungers. At last. Frostborn hungers.
Godlike omen.
Finally. At last. Finally. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Finally. At last. Glory to the Scourge. Now, your pain shall not let you go.
โดนเศร้าเดี๋ยวใจเจ้า
For the Lich King. You will know endless. Finally. For the Lich King. You will know endless. This is more than your pain shall be finished. Now, Frost. At
Our
last.
allies' town needs help.
Speak. What is it? Frostborn.
Our allies' town needs help. needs help.
I'll make sure you suffer. Glory to the scourge.
Our allies' tower
At
needs help.
last. Are you threatening me? I wish only to serve. This is what I want. Speak. Frostborn hungers. What is it now? At last. Frostborn hungers. At last. Frostborn hungers.
Chạy đường. Chạy.
At last.
Our allies' tower needs help.
Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. At last. Frostborn hungers. At last.
Thì người mới gặp ta.
Speak. At last. Frostborn hungers.
Our allies' town needs help.
No one orders me around. At last. This is more like it.
Thoát được, thoát được không?
Glory to the scourge. Frostborn.
Con.
This is more like it. Finally. Speak, fool. This is more like it.
Show me the path. Our warriors have engaged the enemy.
Faithless coward.
Người đông
At last.
There's no time to rest.
Speak, fool. Frostborn hungers. At last. This is what at last. Your pain is legendary. Glory to the scourge. At last.
Thằng nào cứu bạn thay.
Frostborn hungers.
Cứu bạn.
Finally. Frostborn hungers. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. Tread lightly. Finally. At last. I'll make sure you suffer. This is at last. Frostborn hungers. Finally. At last. This is more like it. Finally. At last. Glory to the scourge. For the Lich King. This is more Frostborn hungers. Are you threatening me? What is it now? Tread lightly. You will know endlessly. Finally. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Faithless coward. Finally. For the Lich King. What is it?
Our allies' town needs
Speak.
Well,
Frostborn.
Triple kill!
warriors have engaged the
Are you threatening like this is more like it. What is it? Fine. Okay, so we live. Frostborn hungers. At last. This is more like it. I'll make sure.
How may I serve?
Wait till you see me at
Oh,
Our allies' town needs help.
at last. This is more like it.
Nào, nó đẩy về nó nhập luôn.
Frostborn hungers.
Glory to the sky.
Không biết đẩy về. Đi nó nhập.
This is more like
Are you threatening me?
Speak, fool. Now, Frostborn. This is more like it. Frostborn.
Triple kill!
Glory to the sky.
This is more like it. Frostborn hungers.
Cái gì?
This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. Finally. I'll make sure.
Nó mua ai gói ấy lên.
Frostborn.
Ai gói phở bò. Con Tú là ra. Tin nó Tú à?
Last.
Hả?
Finally. At last. Finally. At last. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it. At last. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. At last. What is it now?
Our allies' town needs help.
À.
This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. Speak, fool. What is it? At last. This is more like it. Finally.
Are you threatening me?
Speak, fool. At last. Now, Frostborn.
Our allies' town needs help.
Finally. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. Finally.
Xin má em còn hồng và đôi môi thắm
No
nồng.
one orders me around.
Đại sứ.
Our warriors have engaged the
I bow. No one orders me around. This is more like it. Finally. At last. Frostborn hungers.
À, là
This is
bên
more
đây.
like it. Frostborn hungers.
Our warriors have engaged
At last. Tread lightly. Finally. At last. Frostborn hungers. At last.
Thì ngồi sướng mà bật đèn nước còn để nó tiếp tôi.
No one orders me around. Speak, fool. Finally. Frostborn hungers. Finally. At last.
Wait till you see me back.
No one will Frostborn hungers. Finally. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. At last. Faithless coward. Your pain shall be legendary. This is more like it. Now. Finally. Frostborn hungers. Your pain shall be legendary. At last. At last. Frostborn hungers.
Are you threatening me?
Our warriors have engaged the enemy.
Red lightning. Finally. Finally. At last. Frostborn hungers. At last. Finally. This is more like it. At last. Frostborn. At last.
Ngọc đẩy về cái này không ra.
You will end this.
Our allies'
No
town
one
needs help.
was around. At last. Of which you will suffer. Now. For the Lich King. Glory to the Scourge. Frostborn.
Are you threatening me?
What?
Our warriors
is
have
it?
engaged the enemy.
What?
No one would have This is more like it. I'll make sure at last.
Đúng nha.
This is more like it. Finally. At last.
This về Ngọc luôn.
At last. At last. Now, for the Lich King. Finally. This is.
What is your wish?
Are you threatening me?
What is it now? Tread lightly. At last. Frostborn hungers. At last. Finally. At last. This is more like it. Finally. At last. Finally. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers.
Our allies' town needs help.
At last. Frostborn hungers.
Our allies' town needs help.
What is it now? At last. Finally. At last. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. Glory to the scourge. At last.
Bây giờ không biết để ý lại kìa.
This
Our
is more
allies'
like
town
it.
needs help.
Frostborn hungers. Now, Frostborn. You will not end this war. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it.
What?
No one will respect you around.
My life for this.
At last. This is more like it. Finally. I'll make sure you suffer. I wish only to serve. No one will respect you around. At last.
Trò tránh rồi đấy.
Tread lightly. Finally. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. Frostborn hungers. At last.
Mày không đi à? Tôi bị chết rồi.
At last. This is more like
Are you threatening me?
I'll have it up in no
More
time.
gold is required.
What is it
Yeah.
now? Frostborn hungers.
Our allies' town needs help.
Legendary. For the Lich King. Finally.
Truth is 3 times double. What do you want?
Are you
No
threatening
one
me?
orders me around. Tread lightly. Your pain shall be legendary. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. At last. Finally. At last. Finally. At last. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. At last. Finally. Frostborn hungers. I'll make sure you suffer.
Our warriors have engaged the
Speak, fool. This is what for the Lich
Ôi, nó đẩy rồi, nó nhầm rồi, nó đẩy.
Finally. At last. Your pain shall be legendary. Frostborn. This is more like it.
Our warriors have engaged the
Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. For the Lich King.
Our allies' town needs help.
This is more than fine. This is more than finally. I'll make sure you suffer.
Our allies' town needs help.
At last. This is what finally.
Our allies' town needs help.
This is what Frostborn hunger. Speak. Speak, this coward. Finally. Thy bidding, master.
Are you threatening me?
This is more like it. At last. Frostborn hungers. Finally. This is more like it. At last. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. Glory to the scourge. Frostborn.
What?
I am ready.
Speak, fool. Finally. At last. Red lightning. Frostborn. What is it now? This is more
What?
like
Are you threatening me?
no one will listen to at last. At last. This is more like it. Now, Frostborn. For the Lich King. Frostborn hungers. Finally. Frostborn hungers. At last.
อ๋อ
Finally. At last.
ơi, cái kẹo là bao nhiêu tiền đây?
Sao đâu?
I'll make sure you suffer. Frostborn hungers. At last.
Huh?
Finally. This is more like it. Finally.
Đây như nó có vẻ
Frostborn hungers. Your pains are legend. At last.
Our allies' town needs help.
For the Lich King. Glory to the Scourge. This is more like it. At last.
Our allies' town needs
Frostborn
help.
hungers. Finally. Now.
Thật là đi mẹ luôn.
You will end this torment. This is more like it. Glory to the Scourge.
Our allies' town needs help.
Triple kill!
Càng nó sắp ra rồi.
Frostborn hungers.
Càng ít ra ít.
Finally. At last. Finally. At last. Frostborn
Nắp vào đây.
at last.
Đi luôn đi.
You will end this torment. This is what
Nát tiền.
At last, Frostborn hungers.
Cho xét đi.
Our allies' town needs help.
Finally, this is more like it.
What?
Speak.
Our allies' town needs help.
At last, this is more like it. No one orders me. Finally,
Are you threatening me?
what is it now?
Our allies' town needs help.
This is more like it. No one orders me. At last, this is more like it. Frostborn hunger.
Ra sĩ à?
This is more like it. Frostborn hunger. At last. Finally. Frostborn hungers. Your pain shall be legendary. Glory to the Scourge. I'll make sure you suffer. This is Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. You will end this torment. Frostborn hungers. Glory to the Scourge. For the living. Triple kill! This is more like it. Finally.
Này trời.
At last.
What?
Our warriors have engaged the enemy.
Speak. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers.
Are you threatening me?
What is it now? Finally.
Full speed ahead!
Speak, fool. Frostborn.
Chết ra.
At last.
Sắp đây.
Finally. Frostborn hungers. At last. Frostborn hungers. At last. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. You will know endlessly.
Rồi đem đi, đợi đi,
No one will This is more like it. Frostborn hungers.
đi. Vào thì chết đi.
I'll make sure you suffer.
Sao cái kia?
What is it now?
Nè,
Frostborn hungers.
bảo vệ uống nước ướm thật.
No one orders me around. This is more like it. At last.
Our warriors
Rồi.
have engaged the enemy.
At last. Speak.
Mỹ nhà rồi. Đi đi.
This is more like
Sao mà đẩy được?
it. At last.
Rồi đép nát
This is
nhà
more
luôn.
like it. Frostborn hungers. Finally. At last. Finally. At last. Finally. Frostborn hungers. Finally. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. I'll make sure you suffer it. You will know endlessly. At last. Finally.
Đi nha rồi. Ôi giời ơi, đập
At
luôn.
last. Roll into the skirt.
Chết tôi rồi.
This is more like it. At last. Frostborn hungers.
Ô vậy. Bảo vệ uống nước ướm quá.
What is it now? Finally. This is at last.
Cho đi xa khỏi nhà.
For the Lich King. Faithless coward. Frostborn hungers. Finally. At last. Frostborn hungers. No one orders me around. At last. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. At last. Finally. At last. This is more like it. For the Lich King. Finally. Frostborn hungers. At last. Glory to the Scourge. Frostborn hungers.
Double kill. Killing spree.
Triple kill! This is more like it. At
Giết
last.
luôn. Tao
This is more like
Ultra kill.
Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. I'll make sure you suffer. Tread lightly.
Mega kill.
Frostborn hungers.
nó thật sự
Finally.
tao đá miếng nát đá. Của nước. Nát nhà còn là của nước à? Nghe. Đúng quá.
At last. At last. This is more like it.
Ghét đi, không nát nhà đâu.
At last. This is
Đúng
more
rồi, lo mà đét đi.
Frostborn. This is more like Frostborn.
Nhà. Đúng quá. Bắn lâu các kiểu.
Our allies' town is low.
Xa xa khỏi nhà. Để đẩy đi sao khóc. Không khả năng đẩy. Chưa nên đẩy được. Ra. Được chạy. Chạy. Con này không ra khỏi nhà là khó là còn nước đó. Đi xa đi.
This is Frostborn hungers. At last. This is more like it. At last. Endless.
Ở ngoài. Không chạy đâu.
This is more like it.
Tiền phải nát đi.
Endless. For the Lich King. At last. Finally. Frostborn hungers. Finally. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. Finally. This is more like it. Finally. This is
เด้นี่เด้
at last. This is more like it. At last. Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. At last. This is more like it. At last. Frostborn hungers. Finally. At last. Frostborn hungers. Faithless coward. Now, Frostborn.
เรียบร้อย
At last. For the Lich King. Finally.
อ่ะนี่
This is more like it. Finally. This is more like it. Glory to the Scourge. Endless torment. Now, Frostborn hungers. What is it now? This is more like it.
ตีตัวสุดๆเหมือนนี่โอเคฟ้า
Frostborn hungers. This is more like it. Finally. At
ไหน
last.
ตายหยาเนี่ย
This is more like it. No one would have What is it now? This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. At last. This is more like it. Frostborn hungers. At last. Finally. Frostborn hungers. Finally. At last.
โอ้ย
Frostborn hungers. Finally.
โดนตี
At last. Finally.
ตีแล้วก็
For the
มัน
Lich
ก็มา
King.
Our warriors have engaged the enemy.
ได้ๆเลยโอ้
Faithless coward. You will end
ตอน
for the Lich King. Frostborn hungers. Glory to the Scourge.
Killing spree.
This is what
Dominating. Double kill. Triple kill.
Speak, fool. Frostborn
Are you
hungers.
threatening me?
What is it now? This is more like it.
โอ้มันสวยน่าหยาเลย